My name is Stephanie McCoy, for anybody that I have not yet met. I'm one of the school counselors here at Sandy Valley. And we just want to present some information for those of you that have seniors and are planning on heading on to the next part of their journey on to college. And I know one of the biggest hurdles to that is financing and how the whole process works, and it seems big and overwhelming. So we do like to bring in some experts to kind of help with that process and talk you through the ins and outs of how that all kind of comes together. So again, please feel free to take notes, or you can always come back and refer back to this presentation, which will be on the counseling website probably in a few days, maybe a week or so. Before I introduce our presenters from Kent Stark, I did want to give you guys a chance to hear from Kim Leggett, who is associated with the Canton Student Loan Foundation. This is just a really great option that some of our students have taken advantage of throughout the years. If you are not getting all of your financial needs met from filling out the FAFSA and getting financial aid that way, this is a really great resource. So I wanted to make sure that you guys heard what she has to offer. So I will turn it over to Kim first to get us started tonight.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, thank you for inviting me. Again, I'm Kim Leggett from the Canton Student Loan Foundation, and we are a nonprofit foundation whose mission is to provide low-interest student loans to graduates of Stark County high schools. So as Stephanie said, if you have looked at the FAFSA and seen all of the free money that you're able to get, grants or anything like that, and then if you're interested in federal funds, if you find you still need assistance, we're a really good place to come. We have helped over 6,000 students with over $38 million since we were established, which was in 1922. So we're almost a 100-year-old foundation that's been in Stark County. So that's a really exciting thing for us coming up here. In order to apply for a loan, a student must have graduated from a Stark County high school, so that's really easy here. They have to have and maintain a 2.0 GPA, and they have to be enrolled in school full-time. So if all those things are true, then the student's eligible to apply. They're able to borrow $3,000 per year for a maximum of $12,000. And we also have graduate school funds available, which I typically don't go into a whole bunch because I don't want to overwhelm people when you're just thinking about undergraduate work right now. But our loans are available for undergraduate schooling and any kind of training after high school. So it doesn't have to be a four-year degree. So typically our deadline is June 1st. This year we've extended it a little bit for previous students because of the COVID pandemic. So, but I will say probably next year our deadline will again be June 1st. So it's important that applications are received by then. We interview the students in the summer, and then the funds are released to the students. We send a check to the students, and you're able to use it for any kind of expenses for school. So if you need to buy books, if you need a computer, you can use it for tuition, you can use it for room and board. It's really any expenses that you need to use it for. The interest begins to accrue when the student starts to pay back, which is 3 months following graduation. So that's a really important point to make. Because when you're looking at student loans, a lot of times the interest starts to accrue right away. So if you borrow the money as you're starting your freshman year or when you're starting your training, that interest starts to accrue, and it keeps accruing for however many years until you graduate or finish schooling and then start the repayment process. So I tell people to really be careful and ask a lot of questions and take a look at the information that you see. We don't have any fees either. And the reason we have such good terms is because we are a nonprofit foundation. Our interest rate is a 6% rate. However, the effective rate's about 1.5% to 2% based on the length of time that students have that money interest-free. Because like I said, it doesn't start to accrue until the student starts to pay back after that 3 months grace period. I want to say a little bit about how we do this every year. So We have a membership of people who donate to our foundation because they want to help a Stark County student with their education. We also have students who are currently repaying their loans, and those funds come right back to the foundation and go back out to another Stark County student. So we kind of consider our program a pay it forward kind of program. Those funds come in and they go right back out to help somebody else out. This past year, we've dispersed about 1.4 million, and that's about typical for us. We help students at every Stark County high school. And then again, we can also help students with grad school if that's something that you think that you're going to be looking at. So I have given Stephanie some electronic copies of our brochure, but this is what our brochure looks like. So those will be available, I believe. The information will also be shared about how to access us. Our website is www.cantonstudentloan.org. Again, my name is Kim. There's information on there about giving us a call. So if you have any questions, please give me a call. I'd be happy to help answer any kind of questions regarding our foundation or financial aid. And I can ask and see if anybody has any questions for me. Nope. Okay.
Thank you very much, Kim.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, before I turn it back to Cindy and Kurt, I just wanted to mention, I see Mr. White on, so hi, Mr. White. He's one of the other counselors here. I wanted to mention the fact that a lot of students and their parents are asking about scholarships, and they want information about our local scholarships and how that all works. I just wanted to make sure that I touched on the fact that a lot of those local scholarships that you see students getting awarded on awards day, which is not till May, a lot of that stuff comes out after the first of the year. So we typically put those out and make them available in our counseling office around Valentine's Day. It's always in the first couple weeks of February, and they're usually due back mid-March. So that is something else that your student can be watching for in terms of the local scholarships, where a lot of our students get a lot of those dollars in May. It's also very crucially important that your student checks their Sandy Valley email. I know we hit you over the head with that a lot. This year is more crucial than ever. I know Mr. White and I send out anything that we get that comes to us as counselors, we will push it out via email. So we send it right to the student's email. So if they're not in the habit of checking their Sandy Valley email daily, they really do need to get in the habit of that to make sure that they're not missing out on any dollars that might be coming their way. Mr. White, did I miss anything in terms of scholarships or anything else you want to mention before we turn it over and talk about the FAFSA?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it, Mrs. McCoy. Definitely use our website as a resource, as well as what these lovely people are about to share with you as far as getting college paid for. So appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. White. So at this time, I guess I will turn it over to Kurt and to Cindy, who are joining us today from Kent Stark's Financial Aid Office. They are the absolute experts in this process, and that's why we love having them back every year. And I just want to let you know, any information they're presenting to you tonight applies at any college or university. It's not specific to Kent Stark. So thank you guys for coming in, and go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. My name's Kurt Drodliff. I'm a financial aid counselor at Stark Campus. Bear with me while I bring up our PowerPoint and make it available for you to watch during the presentation.
As you pull up that presentation, Kurt, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. Hello, I'm Cindy Dang. I'm the admissions counselor for you all at Sandy Valley. I believe I sent out some information, so hopefully your counselors have shared that with you, but otherwise I will be available after Kurt's presentation should you have any questions regarding admissions. Take it away, Kurt.
Okay, thank you. The PowerPoint is still loading. Okay. And again, if you have questions, I believe there's a chat feature where you can type in the question, and at the end, we'll address those questions. But again, as Ms. McCoy said, this is a general presentation on how to apply for federal financial aid. Federal laws and regulations drive the process, so colleges and universities all do it very similarly. Quick overview of, first of all, the government's philosophy of financial aid. Most importantly, we'll talk about the application process. How do you complete and submit the FAFSA electronically every year? The awarding process. How does the college receive your FAFSA results? How do they create that award letter for you? Types of financial aid, both gift aid, grants and scholarships, and self-help aid, loans and work study. And finally, how to determine your out-of-pocket costs. Critical questions we're going to cover tonight. How do I apply for federal financial aid? Submitting the FAFSA, we're going to spend a great amount of time on that. Am I eligible for federal aid? The answer is yes. Regardless of family income, everybody's eligible for federal financial aid. Am I eligible to receive scholarships? Again, the answer is yes. Many scholarships are merit-based. Some are also need-based, but everybody's eligible for scholarships. What do I need to know about borrowing student loans? Both federal student loans and private alternative loans. And finally, what will I have to pay out of pocket? The government's philosophy, first of all, federal financial aid is available to all students, regardless of family income or college cost. But it's the primary responsibility of the family to pay the educational costs to the extent they are able. So, applying for federal financial aid. The FAFSA is short for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The FAFSA for the following school year becomes available every October 1st. So the FAFSA that high school seniors will be submitting, the 2021-2022 school year FAFSA, is now available online for you to complete and submit as soon as you're able. Some schools have priority processing deadlines for the FAFSA. Usually, the sooner you submit the FAFSA, the better off you are, because there are certain types of funding that are limited. In schools, you usually award those on a first-come, first-served basis. Usually, if you can submit the FAFSA by December 1st, you're in very good shape. Now, the FAFSA is based on income from 2 years previous. So the 2021-2022 FAFSA will be based on 2019 federal income tax information. So when you submit the FAFSA online, if you have a copy of your 2019 federal income tax return in front of you, it will go faster for you. Some of the information you're going to need to submit the FAFSA, complete the FAFSA: identifying information such as Social Security numbers, dates of birth, home address, etc. Again, information from 2019 federal income tax returns. The government does ask about assets. So they ask about things, assets like child support received, voluntary contributions to retirement accounts, savings and checking accounts, investments, etc. But again, I guess one of the big things I want to make clear, take your time with the FAFSA. They're very clear on what they want. The directions are very straightforward. Take your time, read them carefully, and it will go smoothly for you. So the filing process for the FAFSA. The very first thing you do, the student and one parent create what's called an FSA ID. It's short for Federal Student Aid ID. It's a username password. The FAFSA is electronic, so the student and the parent sign the FAFSA electronically with this FSA ID. The student and the parent goes to that website at the bottom of the screen. The student will create their username password. Now, it's a process. Again, read the directions carefully. They ask you to answer challenge questions. They ask you to create your own challenge questions. One thing, they ask you for an email. Use an email address that you have immediate access to, because the government sends you an email immediately with a confirmation code. You use the confirmation code to finish out the process. So once the student has created their username password, then the parent will go back to the original FSA ID website, and the parent will create their username password. The parent should use a different email address than the student used. I don't know if the government is worried about fraud, but if the parent uses the same email that the student used, it stops the process. So use a different email address. Once the student and the parent have their FSA IDs, you should wait 2 to 3 days for the government to run your information through their databases, matching up your name, social security number, date of birth. Then you should be able to start and submit FAFSA. But again, this first step, the FSA ID, is very important. And remember, the student has to have their username password. One of the parents also has to have their username password. And it doesn't matter which parent, but one parent has to have a username password. Okay, moving on. Once you have your username passwords, then the student and the parent will go to the main website, studentaid.gov. At studentaid.gov, click the Start Here button, and the student will log in using their username password. Remember, the student logs in, so don't use the parent's username password to log in. It's not the parent's FAFSA, it's the student's FAFSA. So the student will log in with their username password. Once you're logged in, you will work your way through the FAFSA. Make sure you choose the correct FAFSA award year, the 2021-2022 FAFSA. This current school year's FAFSA is still available, the 2020-2021 FAFSA, but that's not the one you want. You want next year's FAFSA, the 21-22 FAFSA. Now, there is a smartphone app for the FAFSA. It's called My Student Aid. My understanding is the smartphone app does mimic the actual FAFSA very closely. My take on this is, if you have internet access at home, if you have a PC or a laptop at home, that's what you should use. If you don't have internet access at home and you're not close to a public library, for example, the smartphone app would be a good option. And there are people in the country that do not have internet access at home. But if you have internet access at home, use that rather than the smartphone app. But this is an option if it works for you. Okay, FAFSA sections. There's a student section on the FAFSA where it's going to ask identifying information for the student, name, date of birth, social security number, address, email, phone number, etc. It's also going to ask income information for the student from 2019, if they had income. They'll also ask for asset information, if they have assets, if they have savings. Next, in the student section, there is a school selection where the student selects their high school, and then they also add every college and university that they think they may attend, that they're still interested in attending. You select colleges through a drop-down menu. The first drop-down list is state, so you would choose Ohio for an Ohio college. Then the second drop-down menu is the school itself. So if you're interested in Kent State University at Stark Campus, you would scroll down to the Ks. If you're interested in University of Akron, you would scroll all the way down to the U's for University of Akron. You can add as many colleges and universities as necessary as you're interested in attending at this point. You can also add a college or university later on. Let's say early in summertime, you decide that you're interested in Walsh University, then you can go back to the FAFSA website, studentaid.gov, log in, and you can make a correction to your FAFSA, and you can add that college at that time. Dependency status is important. Dependent students must include their parents' information and their parents' income on the FAFSA. Independent students do not include their parents' information on the FAFSA. In order to be considered independent for FAFSA purposes, you have to be able to answer yes to one of the questions in this section of the FAFSA. The most common of the questions are, first, are you 24 years old or not? Are you in graduate school? Are you married? Do you have children that you support? Do you have other legal dependents that you support? Are you a military veteran? Are you legally emancipated? Are you in legal guardianship? Not custody, but guardianship. Finally, are you at risk for being homeless? Until you can answer yes to one of those sections, one of those questions, at least for FAFSA purposes, you're considered dependent and you must include your parent on the FAFSA. If you have no contact with your parents, then you contact the college's financial aid office that you're interested in attending, explain the situation, and the school will give you the next steps. At Kent State, we call it a dependency override application. The student explains the situation, why they have no contact with their parent. They have to provide documentation supporting the reason they have no contact with their parent. If the school accepts it, the school will make them independent and they will complete the FAFSA as an independent student without their parents' information on the FAFSA. But again, if you think this applies to you, you need to contact the financial aid office of the college you're interested in attending. Most high school seniors are dependent and they have to include their parents on the FAFSA. Okay, moving on. There's also a section on the FAFSA for the parent. So parent demographics, name, marital status, dates of birth, social security numbers, addresses, etc., etc. They ask about financial information. Most of the time, you will be able to use what's called the IRS Data Retrieval tool. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a couple minutes, but this pop-up will occur from the IRS. You will click submit, and if it works, and it usually does, all of the financial information like adjusted gross income, amount of taxes paid, etc., automatically populates on the FAFSA. The student and the parent both sign the FAFSA electronically with their username, passwords, the FSA IDs, and then they submit the FAFSA. When you submit the FAFSA, you immediately get a confirmation page on your screen telling you that it's been submitted. In a few days, you get an email saying that the SAR, the student aid report, is available online to review. It's a good idea to review the SAR. The SAR is a summary of all the answers you put down FAFSA. It's a good idea to review all those answers and try to catch any mistakes you made. If you made a mistake, go back to the FAFSA website, studentaid.gov, make a correction to the FAFSA. Again, I mentioned this earlier, take your time with the FAFSA, read the directions very carefully, and try to minimize any mistakes. Like Social Security numbers, if your Social Security number begins with 302, don't put 203. That will stop the process. Date of birth, it specifically says month, day, year. So if you were born April 8th, you would say 0408, not 0804. 0804 would be not April 8th. Household size, again, it is very clear on members of the household who are considered members of the household. Again, best practice is to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. Determine parent information, it should be on the FAFSA. If biological parents are separated or divorced, then use the parent who provides more than 50% of the student's support. I think the next slide goes over that in more detail. Here, who is my parent when I fill out the FAFSA? If the parents are married, then both parents get included on the FAFSA, both parents' incomes. If the parents are not married, but they live together, both parents get included on the FAFSA. If the parents are divorced, then the rule is you should include the parent that you live with the majority of the time. If you live with parents 50-50, it's an even split, truly an even split, then you would include the parent that provides more than 50% of the student's financial support. Now, if that parent is remarried, then the step parent has to be included on the FAFSA and the step parent's income. But again, the FAFSA is very clear on who your parent should be for FAFSA purposes. And again, here's another way of looking at it. If the parents were never married, then you should include the parent that you live with the majority of the time over the last calendar year. If you did not live with one parent more than the other, provide information about the parent who provided more financial support during the last 12 months. If the parents are not married but living together, you include both parents. If the parents are married, you include both parents. If the parent is remarried, then you include the parent and the step parent. Okay, moving on. Now, again, about the IRS Data Retrieval tool, again, Kent State and the federal government encourage students and parents to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. And again, it's really nice because it automatically populates many of the income information questions on your FAFSA. This is what the IRS pop-up looks like. So when this pop-up appears on your screen, I think you type in your address, click submit, and move forward with the FAFSA. Now, if the IRS data retrieval does not work for you for whatever reason, then it's just going to take you back to the FAFSA and you would just answer every question one by one. Now, the government does ask questions about assets. And again, it's very clear on what assets they want included on the FAFSA. And this is for both the student and the parent. Cash, savings, and checking accounts are considered assets. Other real estate, investment, and land contracts are assets. Stocks and bonds are assets. Retirement accounts are not considered an asset. The home you live in is not considered an asset. A family farm or a family business, as long as it employs less than 100 people, is not considered an asset. But again, read it very carefully. It's quite clear on what they want, what the government wants. About college savings plans, sometimes they're called 529 plans or sometimes OTA, Ohio Tuition Trust Authority. College saving plans are considered an asset for the parent. So this would be included in the parents section of the FAFSA. Now, if the parent has 3 children, so you have 3 of the college savings plans, all 3 of those plans would be considered an asset for the parent. Now, if the college savings plan is in the grandparent's name, then you don't include it on the FAFSA at all. Remember, it's only the parents that are included on the FAFSA, not grandparents or aunts or uncles or anybody else. Once you reach the end of the FAFSA, there is a section, Sign and Submit. The student will type in their username, password, and click a Sign button. The parent will also type in their username, password, their FSA ID, and they will click Sign. Once both the student and the parent have electronically signed the FAFSA, then you click Submit. There we go. It says Submit my FAFSA now. And then you get a confirmation page immediately. On that confirmation page, it will list what's called the EFC, the Expected Family Contribution. The EFC is the government's measure of how strong the family is financially. It's not a dollar amount, it's an index. The lower the EFC, the more financial need the family shows and the more likely you are to be eligible for grants like the Pell Grant and the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. But again, the EFC is not a dollar amount. It's strictly a measure of how strong the family is financially. Professional judgment is for situations where the family's current income is less than what's reflected on the FAFSA for a variety of reasons. Remember, the FAFSA is based on 2019 income, period. Now, if the family's current income is less than that, you contact the financial aid office of the college you're interested in. At Kent State, we call it a special circumstance application. You fill out the application explaining what's going on, provide documentation of the family's current income. There's a counselor at the Kent Campus Financial Aid Office who will calculate a new FAFSA result, a new EFC measure based on the current income. And the idea is for the EFC to go down and the student to be eligible for more financial aid. But again, this is processed by the financial aid office of the school you will be attending. So if this is a situation for you, contact the financial aid office of the school you're interested in attending, the college you're interested in attending. Okay, the awarding process. Once you set the FAFSA, every college that you included on your FAFSA will get the FAFSA results electronically from the government. The school runs it through a computer awarding program and generates an award letter and sends that award letter on to the student. Then the student can compare the different award letters and factor that into their final decision on what college to attend. Expected family contribution, I covered this already. Again, I think the thing to remember is it's not a dollar amount. If your EFC is $4,000, that does not mean you're going to be expected to pay $4,000 and then somebody else covers the rest. That's not the situation at all. The EFC is strictly a measure of the strength of the family financially. The lower the EFC, the more financial aid you will be eligible for. It stays the same regardless of school. Cost of attendance or budget. For every college you're interested in attending, it's important to determine your direct costs. All colleges are required to establish the cost of attendance or a budget. It's made up of 5 main things: tuition, room and board, books, transportation costs, and miscellaneous personal. Some of those costs are not direct costs that you owe the school. For example, at Kent State Stark campus, we're a commuter college, so we don't have residence halls. There's no room charge, there's no food plan charge. The only direct cost is tuition and fees. But if you attend a college and you live on campus, you're going to have tuition and fees, you're going to have a room charge, and you're going to have a food plan charge. You need to determine your direct costs for every school you're interested in. Subtract your financial aid using the award letter from each particular school and determine how much you still owe out of pocket for each school. The other estimates, books, transportation, miscellaneous, those are estimates. It's not what you owe the school. And if you're not living on campus, you won't owe a room charge or a food plan charge, but we still have to make an estimate for that. So again, for Stark campus, our total cost of attendance is almost $15,000, but that's not what you owe out of pocket. Again, this is more the same. I think it's very important that for every school you're interested in attending, you need to determine your direct costs for each school, subtract the financial aid that each school is offering, determine your out-of-pocket costs for each school, and factor that into your final decision on what school to attend. Types of financial aid. There's 2 main types. The better type is gift aid. Gift aid you don't pay back. Scholarships and grants are the 2 main types of gift aid. Self-help aid is financial aid that you do pay back, either as a loan or earning that money through an on-campus job. Grants. The largest federal grant is the Pell Grant, and the Pell Grant is based on your EFC. The lower the EFC, the more likely you are to be eligible for a Pell Grant, and the larger the Pell Grant will be. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, the SEOG, is a much smaller federal grant program. It has limited funding. It's called campus-based aid, and every college gets a certain amount of this SEOG funding, and they award it as they see fit. So that's one reason it's important to submit the FAFSA October or November early on, because many schools award the SEOG on a first come, first served basis. Scholarships. One of the main sources of scholarships is going to be from the college itself. Incoming freshman scholarships that the college offers you. There's also many external independent scholarships out there from independent organizations that you can search for. Again, a very good resource is Sandy Valley's guidance department, online and in person. It's an excellent way to find those local scholarships from local organizations, things like the Kiwanis Club, 4-H, veterans organizations like the VFW. Here's a hint. The Stark Community Foundation has a lot of scholarships. It seems to be a large clearinghouse for local scholarships. You can Google it. It's Stark Community Foundation. You'll get to their website if you Google it. You can also try one or two of those large scholarship search engines. Here's 3 of the more popular ones. Local libraries, you know how the Stark County District Library has branch locations throughout the county? The reference desk librarian might be plugged in about these local scholarships. They say January, February, and March is the best time of the year to search for these local independent external scholarships for the following school year. State of Ohio financial aid, the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, the OPOC, that is based on the EFC from your FAFSA. So if your EFC is low enough, you will be awarded the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. And again, it's a grant, you don't pay it back. The rest of those programs, you can go online to the Ohio Board of Regents website. I think it's ohiohighered.org, and you can take a look at each of those programs and determine whether you're eligible or not for that funding. Now, moving on to self-help aid, federal work study is on-campus jobs where funding, or at least 75% of the student's wage, is paid for by the federal government, and then the college pays for 25%. So federal work study, you get an on-campus job, you get paid every 2 weeks, depending on what your wage is and how many hours you worked. At Kent State, if you do not show financial need, if your EFC is too high to be eligible for federal work study, we have what's called campus-based funding, where we will still offer you the campus job, and Kent State pays 100% of the wage. But if the student is eligible for federal work study, we award them federal work study, and that frees up more money to hire more students. Loans. You may agree, but the government considers loans to be a type of financial aid. Remember the very first screen, the government's philosophy of financial aid. It's available to everybody regardless of family income. But again, loans are considered a type of financial aid. Federal student loans are called Stafford loans, and they are split into what's called subsidized and unsubsidized loans. They have a low fixed interest rate of 2.75% fixed. The student does not go into repayment till 6 months after they graduate. The difference between subsidized and unsubsidized, subsidized loans are interest-free while the government or while the student is in school. Unsubsidized loans, interest builds or accrues while they're in school. Freshmen are allowed to have $5,500 in Stafford loan, and part of that will be subsidized depending on EFC. Some of it will be unsubsidized. When it comes to student loans, your best option is the federal student loan through the FAFSA. So if you need to use a loan, use this loan first. Interest rates are better than what you'll find at a bank. You don't have to pass a credit check like you do with a bank, so you don't need a cosigner like you might at a bank. Also, the government offers more options when it comes to repayment than the bank does. If you need to use a student loan, use the federal student FAFSA first. If you still owe money, then one option to correct is what's called a Parent Plus loan. It's a federal loan through the FAFSA. Plus is short for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. You can look at the bullets there. It has a higher interest rate. The government does run a credit check on the parent. The parent can start paying the loan immediately, monthly payments, or the parent can have it deferred until after the student graduates. If the parent is denied, then the parent or the student is eligible for $4,000 more in federal unsubsidized loans, but only if the parent is denied. Now, if the parent wants everything to be in the student's name, so no parent loan, then the student is going to have to apply and be accepted for what we call a private or alternative student loan, which is a student loan from a bank or credit union. You can go to any bank you want. It pays to compare banks. My understanding is the Canton Student Loan Foundation, Kim Leggett at the beginning of this presentation talked about it. They do offer better rates and better terms of repayment than banks. So if you have to go down this road, it pays to look at the Canton Student Loan Foundation. Determining out-of-pocket costs. Again, we talked about this earlier on. That website can give you a ballpark figure on how much different colleges and universities cost. But really, I think you need to find out your direct costs for each college you're interested in attending. Once you know your direct costs, subtract financial aid and determine how much you owe each school out of pocket. And then you can use that information when you start making your decisions on what college to choose. Quick review. Again, complete applications for admissions to colleges and universities. Apply for the FSA ID. And again, you can do that right now. October 1st has already passed. Once the student and the parent have their FSA IDs, wait 2 or 3 days for the government to process those IDs. Then submit the FAFSA at studentaid.gov. Meanwhile, search for scholarships, both scholarships from the college and external scholarships. Once it starts getting closer to summer, determine your out-of-pocket costs for each college. Once you decide on what college you're going to attend, determine how you're going to pay your out-of-pocket costs. So are you going to get a Parent Plus loan? Are you going to get a private alternative loan? Are you going to get on a payment plan? You know, Kent State has monthly payment plans. All colleges and universities do. Here's another timeline of what to expect and we know when to do. At Kent State Start Campus, this Saturday we have a virtual FAFSA filing workshop. You can go to Kent State's Start Campus financial aid website at the bottom of the page and register, so we'll have an idea of how many families will be there. Saturday, November 7th, we have a virtual scholarship workshop where we'll talk about not just Kent State Stark scholarships, but local scholarships. We'll give tips on how to apply, how to write the essay, etc., how to search for scholarships. If you have questions, if you're interested in Kent State and you have financial aid questions, specific personal questions, be sure to contact us. If it's a personal question like you don't have access to your parents, you don't have contact with your parents, you need to contact the financial aid of the college you're interested in attending. Okay, Cindy is our admissions counselor. Were there any questions, Cindy?
Whoops, I didn't see anything
Okay.
come up. If anybody has any questions right now, feel free to chime in. There's also the raise your hand button. There's also the chat function that's on here. However you're chiming in, feel free to sound off now. Otherwise, we'll stick around for a few minutes. And Ms. McCoy, if you have anything to share, you're also welcome to present as well.
I don't have anything additional. The only questions that parents had asked me, you guys addressed perfectly. Someone had asked a question about divorced parents, but that chart lays it out very nicely and neatly. So I think that all got answered during the presentation. So I thank you both for being here and presenting. It's always very well laid out, and I think you make it very simple to follow. So parents, if you have additional questions, please reach out. You can reach out to Mr. White and I. You can reach out to Cindy or Kurt. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have. So thank you very much.
Okay, good luck.